beautiful people, what is up and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm gonna be giving you guys my first impressions thoughts on the brand new Nomad Cosmetics Verona palette. This is their first release of 2023. They did send me this in PR and I'm so happy that I get a chance to try this out because it's cute. She cute. That being said, before we dive in, if this is your first time watching me, welcome. I'm Jamila and I love all things beauty. I love all things makeup. I love all things skincare, and I especially love sharing my tips and tricks for how to find high-end and luxury beauty products at bargain prices. If that sounds like something you're interested in, I would absolutely love if you would consider subscribing and joining the fam. Okay, before we dive in it, also, I do want to show you guys my shirt because I got this in the Target Black History Month collection thing, and I think it's such a cute t-shirt. Let me scooch. See that? I like the blue. I think it's just a really nice, vibrant color on my skin tone, so I'm happy for the blue, and I think the design is dope, and it's just a comfy tee, so I think it's adorable. And the Target Black History Month t-shirts are only $15, so super inexpensive in my opinion. Anyways, y'all didn't come here to talk about all of that. You came here to talk about the Nomad Verona palette. So how my first impressions or review videos typically go is I'm going to give you product details, then we will jump into some swatches, and then we will end with 2 looks so you can see the palette demoed on my eyes, and then I'll come back and close things out with some first impressions, thoughts, so that you can kind of like get how I'm feeling about the palette. So, product details. Like I said, this is the first release Nomad Cosmetics is putting out for 2023, and this is their palette that's inspired by Verona, Italy. It's absolutely beautiful in my opinion, and it sort of plays off of the love and death kind of duality piece. So, it is one of their larger palettes, so it's the same size as like think Paradise Islands in terms of length, and it does have 18 shades. Now with Nomad, you do get a little postcard that tells you about the palette, so I'm just going to give you guys some of the details here. Made famous by the story of Romeo and Juliet, Verona, with its picturesque piazzas, charming cafes, and immaculate architecture, is the perfect setting for any love story. Historic city with youthful energy, it is an enchanting place to visit during Valentine's season, as odes to the star-crossed lovers are on full display. Follow the story of Juliet's balcony and the house of Romeo to the tomb where the tragedy unfolds, all the while enjoying the city's amorous gems along the way. So the palette: fiery love and sorrowful death. Love blossoms on the left with pink blushes and rich roses, turning into intense reds and scarlets of passionate love. And death consumes the right with cool tones of woeful grays, tragic blues, deep violets, and the completeness of black. 12 mattes and 6 shimmers. And the cause: we are proud to support World Wildlife Fund that protects all animals, including lovebirds. So another thing that's typical for Nomad is that they usually give 10% of the proceeds of their palettes to a specific cause, which I have always really enjoyed seeing. So super excited by this palette. One of the biggest differences from sort of the previous releases that I own is that instead of it opening up as a typical flap, it does open like this, so you can really see the duality that they talk about. So even though it is 18 shades, it does come off as sort of 2 9-pan eyeshadow palettes, where you have one here that's focused on the reds and the pinks and the scarlets, and then the second side that is focused on the sort of blues, the purples. And they say 12 mattes and 6 shimmers, but I do believe that this purple shade here is a multi-chrome. Like, I can see the shift in the mirror. And that's the other thing too. Instead of one large mirror, you do get one on either side of the palette. You do also have some product details in the back as well as on the box. On the back, it says that this has a 12-month shelf life. It is cruelty-free and vegan. And this, I believe, was made in China. Yes. So looking on the Nomad Cosmetics website, it does say that it's 12 velvety mattes, 4 intense shimmers, and 2 sheer shimmer toppers. This will launch Tuesday, January 24th at basically midnight, 12:01 a.m. So midnight Eastern Standard Time, and it will retail for $47. And it's not a limited edition palette. I think that that's really important because y'all know I believe in waiting for sales and not paying full price for anything. And Nomad does do sales on occasion where you can get 25% off. So if you really don't need this, wait for a sale. And then the last thing that I want to mention that comes with this palette is that, you know, it is inspired by the Romeo and Juliet story, and they do include a envelope for you to write letters to Juliet. I believe that there's an organization called Letters to Juliet where you can write asking for love advice, and they actually write you back. And I thought that that was such a cute concept. So they include a prepaid stamped envelope for you to write your letters to Juliet and send it into them, and then you will get a response back. Okay, that being said, let's dive into the swatches of this palette, and then we'll dive into some quick items. Okay, so let's dive into the swatches, and here is the palette. I'm sure I filmed the intro after this, so I wanted to give you guys a real nice up-close visual of both sides so you can see the pretty embossing and you can really see the colors here. I am filming in natural light, so this is really just kind of like true to what it looks like. So for swatches, I'm gonna swatch one 9-pan, well, one half of the palette first, and then I will swatch the other half. Okay, let's dive in. So starting with the red side, I'm gonna go row by row. So here we have the first 3 shades. Paradise, Cupid, Balcony. Cupid swatched really sheer. Here we have the next 3 shades. Rose, Love, Romeo. Oh, that's pretty. Romeo was a little hard pressed in the pan, but it swatched a lot better than I expected. Love looks like a red in the pan, but it's kind of more orange than red. And here we have the last 3 shades. Light, Comedy, and Quill. Very pretty. Here are the first 3 shades on the other side. Tomb, Moors, Inferno. That's pretty. Here we have the next 3 shades. Let's start here. Juliet, Death. Wow, that's a really pigmented black. And Poison. That is a beautiful navy shade. And these are the final 3 shades. Dagger, Tragedy, and Dark. So here we have it. Truthfully, I am surprised at how different the sort of reddish, pinkish side swatched in terms of the individual shades, because I have seen some other creators swatch it and they did look a lot closer, and I was like, ooh, looks like it might have a couple of repeats. And honestly, looking at it now, I do think that there is some redundancy, and I don't think we needed all of these pinks and reds. Like these 2 pink shades are very close. I don't think that both of these were necessary. I really like the orange reddish shade here because I think that's pretty unique. I would have liked to see a deeper shade than this, maybe like a rich brown, but I understand why they wouldn't do that because they did include a black, and you can utilize black to deepen up any shade, so not mad about that. But maybe they could have included like a purple, because I feel like this shade here, Cupid, it looks like a duochrome, so I see pink and purple, but there's no purple in this sort of quad. I just wish there was more versatility instead of pink and red. It would have been nice to see something else in there as well, because this is a little bit too monochromatic for my preferences. That being said, the second half of the palette, gorgeous, stunning, really excited to play with this and put it on my eyes. I just think that this is beautiful, so let's go ahead and dive in. I think I'm going to do 2 looks. I'm going to do one look using one half of the eye, using one half of the palette, and the other look using the other half of the palette as sort of like the main focus. Because this is sort of a duality palette, I think that that makes the most sense. Now, the way my lids are set up, I kind of do multiple looks in one day. So this will span 2 days, so you'll probably see an outfit change. But that's neither here nor there. Let's dive into the first look. Okay, so I'm going to start with the side that I'm most excited for. And this is really weird to hold. So I'm going to just do it like this. I'm going to go in with this sort of gray purple shade called Dagger. And I'm going to use that as my transition shade, putting that all over the crease. Oh, okay. That's not a bad, oh, okay. It's just deeper than I expected it to be. But the pigment, okay. Next, I'm going to go into the deep purple shade Dark, and I'm going to deepen up the outer part of that just a little bit. So I want to start in the center, dragging it out. And I want to just deepen things up just a tad. Oh, those are blending together so nicely. One of the things I've always appreciated about Nomad's matte formula is that it is extremely blendable and beginner friendly. So I have no issues with blending or mixing shades. It is one of the more powdery matte shades, matte formulas out there, but I've always appreciated more powdery mattes because it is just easier to blend and work with if you are not an expert, which I am by no means an expert, a professional, really just winging this as I go, so doing the best that I can. But look at that. That was so quick and easy. So I'm going to use my color switch. I'm going to clean off that brush. And then I'm going to go into the deep blue. And I'm going to use that to build the outer V. Now I'm really hoping that this stays as a deep, true navy blue. One of the things that I have seen happen with blues from Nomad in the past, okay, so a little bit of fallout, is that it looks blue and then once I put it on the eyes and I start blending, it turns teal. And I don't know if that's just virtue of my skin tone, but so far it's looking true navy, so I like this. It is staying true to color and not turning into some other funky teal shade.
Try again.
I'm really packing that pigment on because I want this to be really nice and deep. It is so rich. I have a little bit of fallout, but honestly, it's not bothering me at all. Okay, y'all, I already love where this is going. So let's put some shimmers on the lid. I am going to go into the purple multi-chrome shade. Like, it's really hard to see the shift in this, and part of that is that because Nomad uses a more dry formula, it doesn't translate as well as some of those more wet multi-chromes. But if you look, I guess you can kind of see it looks a little green gray there, and then it looks true purple. So you see that shift? Okay, anyways, I want to put that on the center of the lid, so I'm just going to go in with my finger because I am a-okay with applying shadows like this. And sometimes Nomad shadows can be a little hard to pick up with a brush. So just plopping that into the center of the lid. That is stunning. And I just moved from this eye to this one, and I haven't dipped back into the pan yet. And I still have so much product on my finger. And then going in with my other finger, I'm gonna go into the gold green shade. It's called Moors, and I'm gonna put that into the inner part of the eye, covering that first third of the lid. This is a little bit harder to maneuver with the finger, and I will go back in with a brush and clean up all of this, because you can see it's definitely like not neatly placed on the eye, and I do need to fill in some of the blanks and clean things up. And I wanted to use this one because it adds a little bit of brightness to the eye. Like, this eye is already pretty dark, so I needed something to give it a little bit of brightness and lightness. Okay, now that we have the color laid down, I'm gonna clean off my finger, and then I'm gonna go in with a brush and just start sort of shaping things out better. And I will go in and sort of blend out the edges, because you can see where I put things down with my finger, it's kind of very harsh where the lines of separation are. And that is the last thing that you want to see, is very harsh lines. So I'm just going to go in, sort of blend everything together, make it look a little bit more seamless and a little bit more cohesive.
I'm alright. Don't gotta try again. I don't have some trick on my sleeve I can show you, but I can guarantee you look at me and see that I'm the type of...
Okay, so I'm almost done with my base, but I wanted to come back and do my waterline on camera. So I'm gonna keep it pretty simple, but I want to try out the final shade. So I'm gonna start with the purple, the deep purple shade, and I'm putting that into the outer half of the eye. Then I'm dipping into the navy blue, and I'm gonna put that over that purple shade, just deepening up the outer part a little bit. And then lastly, I'm going into the blue shimmer, Juliet, and I'm going to put that into the inner half of the eye. Okay, I'm gonna go finish up the rest of my face, and I'll be right back to show you the final look.
And all the time I've given up, I'm taking back now. I've been spending all my hours differently, 'cause it's never too late to live what you say, and I know I'll be okay.
Okay, so this is look number 1, and I am already really impressed with how the shadows have performed so far. But that being said, I've only played with the sort of death side of the palette, so I want to go ahead and play with the love side. So I'm going to do one more look, and then I'll come back and give you guys my final thoughts. Full disclosure, my lids cannot handle 2 looks in one day, so you're going to see a little bit of an outfit change and everything. Because I have to film this in 2 days, because I just can't. Plus, I don't want to wash this off. Y'all see how this looks? It is cute. I really don't want to wash this off just yet. So let's get into the second look, and then I'll come back and give you guys my final thoughts. Okay, let's get started with look number 2 using the love side of the palette. I want to use as much mattes as possible, because I do think that some of these look very similar, and I want to see if they will look the same once applied to the eyes, because sometimes things can look similar in the pan, but then when you put them on the eyes, it doesn't look as similar. So I'm going to start with the shade Balcony, and I'm going to use that in the inner half of the eye as my first transition shade. Ooh, it's really good. That is brighter than I thought. Next, I'm going to go into Rose, because when I swatched both of these next to each other, they did seem very similar. So I'm going to pick up some of that, and I'm going to put it on the outer part of the eye, blending it into the Balcony shade, because I want to see if it's really, yeah, you see, you can already tell that you can't tell the difference between these 2 shades. Like, yes, you can see that this is a little bit deeper, a little bit richer, but next to this, like, could you tell this was the same shade? Or does it just look like I used one shade and I blended it out? I am a medium deep complexion with a very yellow golden undertone. So maybe this will look different on someone with either a lighter complexion or a different undertone. But for me, these shades are blending into each other and kind of looking like the exact same shade. You can see the difference. I will admit that. You can see the difference, but I don't think it's big enough. Just saying. Now, I want to add some depth to this. So before I go into this deep rich shade, I actually want to go into this shade to see if that does anything in terms of changing the color. It does look a little bit more orange red than pink. So I want to put that underneath those two shades that I laid down. Okay, yeah, you can see the color difference there. That's pretty. Definitely more on the orange side. I don't want to add too much. I just wanted to know if we could pick up the differences in these shades. And quite frankly, if I were just doing my eyes, I wouldn't mix all of these mattes. Like, I like to add a bunch of different mattes, but because these mattes in my opinion are kind of close, I wouldn't go in with all of these. I just really want to see if you can pick up the very subtle differences in tones of these shades, which you can. But again, they are so subtle that I wonder if it really matters. Because like, nobody's gonna stare at your eyeshadow that hard, and if they are way too close, and COVID is still real. Just saying. Okay, so I cleaned off that brush a little bit, and I'm just gonna go in with the deep shade. This is called Quill, and the shade that I went in with before that was called Light. So I'm gonna take Quill, start packing it onto the outer corner, and then blend that into the other match shades to get a nice deep V. Now, because all these shades I went in with were a little rich to begin with, I'm going to go in with the lightest shade. It's called Paradise. It's a very, very light pink. And I'm going to gently dip my brush into that. And I'm going to blend out the edges a little bit. This is actually a pretty nicely pigmented shade that I could have gone in with as a transition shade instead of a blend out shade. It just depends. Let me know down in the comments below if you prefer to start dark and then blend out, or if you are like me and you prefer to start with a crease color and then build on top of it. Neither is right or wrong. It's honestly just preference. I've done both, but this is the one that I've done the most, so this is the one I'm most comfortable with in terms of application, starting with a light shade and then building and building and building. Okay, so this is what the eyes are looking like right now. I think we get good depth with this shade, but I do think that I need a little bit more. So I'm actually gonna go into, I'm trying to decide if to go into the deep purple or if to go into the black. Let's go into the black because we are testing out a little bit. So I'm going to take this Sydney Grace brush, dip ever so gently into the black, because just take your time. I know it can be very intimidating. And I'm going to start by sort of stamping that in the outer part. And blending. Now, black is a really nice shade to have in palettes, or a deep brown, because it can be used to deepen up any color within that palette. So this will not turn the shadow black, it will just make it a darker color. You just start with a little bit, blend, take your time, and you should get a deeper color. Okay, I like that. I like the depth that that gave. So this is what it looks like with the black added. This is what it looks like if I just stuck with the shades that were on the red side of the palette. Either is fine. I just like things to have a little bit more depth on my complexion personally, and if you are a deeper shade than me, it might not be, this might not be enough depth for you. So you can always add the black, and you don't have to go as deep as I did, but you know, you can do what works for you. So I'm just gonna even out the eyes now. Okay, now that I think I have the eyes relatively even, let's go into the shimmers. And the first one that I want to play in is this really gorgeous, fiery, kind of orangey red shade. Like, it is so pretty. Y'all know I love a good orange. So I'm gonna just get in with my fingers because I think that's the best way to apply Nomad shadows. Start plopping that into the center of the lid. Oh my god, it's beautiful.
Trying to eat the hours away. Who knew that I like Milky Way? Wake up, I'm ready to go.
And then I'm gonna dip into the sort of pink purple. I'm calling it a duochrome. I don't know if it's actually a duochrome. I do believe this is one of the two toppers in this palette because it doesn't have a ton of base to it, as you can see. And I'm gonna put that into the inner parts of the eye, blending it into that coppery shade.
Upside down and I'm turning inside out. Tell me that it gets better being alone together.
Okay, and now as per usual, I'm gonna go in with a brush because there's only so much my finger can do. I'm going to clean up the lids, you know, fill in where I didn't get a chance because my fingers couldn't fit. Do a little bit more blending so things are more cohesive. There's less harsh lines, and then I'm gonna come back, show you guys my final look, and give you guys my final thoughts on this palette. My final first impressions thoughts, that is.
Think of the places I could be, so I give up and watch TV. I think I'm going crazy, pacing around my room. Tell me that it gets better being alone together. The world is upside down and I'm turning inside out.
Okay guys, this is the final look. This is the second look using the new Nomad Cosmetics Verona palette. Now before we dive into sort of my final thoughts, I do want to let you guys know what else I'm wearing on my face. So I am wearing my Lancome Teint Idole foundation. I've been wearing this for like the last 2-ish weeks, so it's kind of been like in my stash right now. I did prime my face with the Bobbi Brown face base. For my bronzer, I'm using the Revolution Glow bronzer. This is in the shade medium. I'm really close to panning this, so I'm doing my best. For my blush, I'm wearing the, I believe it's Electric Bloom. Yep, the Electric Bloom blush from Pat McGrath because it just went, it's so vibrant that it went with this eye look really, really well. I'm also wearing the Marc Jacobs Jet Girl highlight, which y'all know Marc Jacobs is not a brand anymore, so I apologize. But honestly, that highlight formula that they had was bomb.com. And for my lips, lastly, I'm wearing my Blend Bunny lip liner with the Haus Labs lip crayon in Wine Mouth and the Sydney Grace lip gloss in Tracy. This is the old Haus Labs formula, but I do think that the new brand is using the same formula. So if this is a shade that exists, I will link it down below. And that is it, I think, for this face. So let's talk about the palette, because that's what y'all want to know. I really like this. I think it's a nice palette. I do have some thoughts overall, so let me just first start with the packaging. I think that this is absolutely beautiful. Like I said before, Nomad always kills it when it comes to their themes. I think that they're always spot on with how they package products. I like that you have sort of the duality on, in the packaging of this palette. However, in terms of like usability, I don't know if I'm a huge fan of the double flaps. I think that it is really hard to apply makeup this way. What I had been doing is that I kind of like flip it like this because there's a mirror on each side and I use it like this, but I think it's just hard to hold and use it like this because then the shade names are inverted. It's just not my favorite. And I think because it is kind of the double-sided piece, if I'm holding it like this and I want to dip into a shade from this part of the palette, it's just very weird, and then I don't necessarily want to hold it like this. I just think that this setup is a little bit hard to use if you want to utilize the entire palette. If you are planning to use one side only, I think it's a little bit easier, but I don't love the packaging, but it's not like a no-go for me. Honestly, I wonder if it would have made more sense for Nomad to release two separate palettes instead of one big palette. But I don't mind that this is one sort of big palette where you get two different sides. So in terms of the color story, I think it's a nice color story. I really like the sort of death side of this palette because I think that this is absolutely beautiful. You get the really nice cool tones. I think that this is a cohesive color story, but I also think it's a color story that gives me a lot of versatility and variety. So you get blues, you get purples, and then you get this sort of grayish row that is kind of, and I don't want to call it neutral, but you can get a very wearable look with this shimmer shade and sort of sticking with these grays. So I do think that you have a lot of versatility in this side of the palette. Now on this side of the palette, I'm not a huge fan. And part of that is because it is extremely monochromatic. And I do think that there are some shades that are so similar to each other. It's very repetitive in terms of the shades. I think that the 3 shades here, those 3 pink shades, are very, very close. And on the eyes, it's very hard to distinguish that you have multiple pink shades on the eye. I do really like this orange red shade because I think it's absolutely stunning and very, very pigmented. I didn't use it in this look today, but when I swatched it, I was like, that's a really pretty unique shade. I'm torn on this one because while I am able to get a deep outer corner, I don't think that it's deep enough. I think that they didn't go deep enough on this side for my preference. So what I've been doing, or what I had to do with this look, was to reach into the black on the other side to deepen things up. I wish that this was slightly deeper. I also wish that instead of making this such a monochromatic palette, they gave us some neutral shades, because that's one of the things that I think this palette is lacking overall. I think that if you like having a palette that allows you to play in color and play in neutrals, you're not gonna get it from this palette because there's no like just general browns or beiges or the type of neutral shades that you think of that could make this a more everyday wearable palette. So if you are someone that you're very comfortable in just staying in the colorful lane, I think you will like this. But if you are someone that likes to have a little bit of neutrals mixed into your colorful palettes, I don't know if this is gonna call to you. So I really wish that they had pared down some of the pinks and the reds here and given us a little bit of neutrals to make this just slightly more versatile. That being said, I do really like this palette. I had a lot of fun playing in it. I think that the mattes were extremely pigmented and blendable. I'm curious to see if this will stain my lids because those reds and those pinks, baby. But I think it's the same good quality Nomad mattes that I'm used to. They work really well. They build upon each other really well. No patchiness, none of that. The shimmers are nice, but I do think that they are a little bit hard pressed into the pan. Like trying to pick this up with a brush was very difficult, and I don't mind going in with my finger. You guys saw I did it for both of these looks, but when I'm done applying shadows with my finger, I like to go in with a brush to clean things up and get sharper edges. And I was like digging my brush into these shadows to get it because they are very, very tightly packed in here. So if you are someone that just does not like applying shadows with your fingers at all, I don't know if you're gonna like this, because I struggled. I really did. And I am by no means an expert when it comes to shadow application. So take that with a grain of salt and definitely look at other reviews to see if folks are using other types of brushes or brush hairs that make it easier to apply with a brush. So I do want to say that I did receive this palette in PR, so I want to let you guys know whether I would have picked this up had I not gotten it in PR. And the answer is yes. I do have a video on my channel where I talk about my short list of brands, my priority brands for 2023, and Nomad Cosmetics is one of those that I consider a VIP because I really enjoy their shadows and I really enjoy the formula. And while I am a little bit disappointed with the sort of love side of this palette, I do like that sort of deep purple side, and I like that they included a multi-chrome, this purple multi-chrome, that it feels different from other multi-chromes because it's not the typical sort of wet, glassy or glossy type of multi-chrome that exists. It's one of those more drier, more powdery formulas, and I've always really enjoyed the Nomad Cosmetics formula. I would have waited for a sale though. I do think that because I'm not in love with the entire palette and that red side is just a little too monochromatic for me, I would have waited for a sale to pick this up, but it definitely would have been added to my collection. Now, this video should be up after the palette has officially launched, so I will link it down below. I also want to flag that I do have a code with Nomad. It's just Jamila, so if you do plan on picking it up, I 100% recommend that you use a code. It doesn't have to be my code, use anybody's code. My code is not affiliated, so I don't make any money off of it, and I know that there are some creators that do and some that don't, so pick whichever one you could remember, I guess, and use that to save some money. But yeah, it's a really nice palette. I really like it. I think I'm gonna get a lot of use out of this. I think it's good. I think it's cute. It's a solid release for their first palette in 2021, Jesus, what year? Their first palette for 2023. So very excited to see what else the brand has coming for the rest of the year. If you like this video, I'd absolutely love if you would hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe on your way out if you haven't already done so. Thank you guys so much for watching and for spending a little bit of your time with me today. I appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye.